We are so honored and grateful to have Lysa TerKeurst here with us today. We're grateful you're here today, Lysa. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be with you.
You've got a new book. Basically, I want to trust you, but I don't. And I had been traveling and it wasn't available before I started traveling. I just looked at it last night, downloaded it on Kindle. I'm very excited just to see. I do appreciate your vulnerability and your willingness to share your true heart. I'm going to turn this over to Lauren because she has read your book.
Wonderful. Before we start, Lysa, do you want to tell everybody hello and maybe what organization you're connected with? I know most people probably know who you are, but it'd be great for you to introduce yourself briefly here.
Well, thank you, Lauren. Yes, so Lysa TerKeurst. My name is spelled Lysa. TerKeurst is really hard to spell, but Lysa is easier to remember. I work with Proverbs 31 Ministries, and I'm the Chief Visionary Officer. I have an amazing team of women and a handful of men that work for me. Our office is in Charlotte, North Carolina. And because of some of the personal experiences that I've been through, I have really made the focus of my last several books helping women who have dealt with really life-altering issues in relationships. It's not always marriages that cause us extreme heartbreak. It can be the parent relationship. It can be friendship breakups and all of that. In my situation, it was an almost 30-year marriage ending. I call it the death of my marriage because of infidelity, substance abuse, and just a lot of trauma. And it was a situation I never thought I would go through. So that's how I came to really focus the topics of my last books on some of what many of you can relate to.
It was excellent. And I felt like it really spoke to my heart as a survivor of abusive relationships myself, and really connected with different your formulas that you shared, which you're going to get into. And it also really impacted me because you talked a lot about how trust impacts our relationship with God, and we get wrong beliefs about God, and that impacts our choices and our decisions and how we view relationships. And I just found myself be able to relate to so much of it, but at the same time, you gave me so much hope. So let's start with something that's practical from your book. The first question I have for you is you offer a memorable formula to define trust. Will you unpack that for our audience?
Absolutely. Well, first, let me say trust is the oxygen of all human relationships. If you starve a relationship of trust, then you're going to starve it of vibrancy and possibly even starve it to death. So, trust is a really crucial component. But what makes up trust? It's two words: it's safety and connection. Now, what can happen is those things are supposed to operate in tandem. The connection is supposed to be safe. But what can happen when we walk through a betrayal or a breakup or something that really emotionally has hurt us and probably shocked us, then we can have the desire to take one of those two words, either connection or safety, to an extreme. Some of us, our response will then be, I want this connection so badly that I'm willing to diminish my own need for safety. And when I say safety, that means like I'm going to overlook red flags. I'm going to excuse things that I shouldn't excuse. I'm not going to tell other people the real story because I'm so desperate to keep the connection. In other situations, we become so desperate for safety that we minimize connection. And it's not just connection with the person who's hurting us, it's really connection across the board because all relationships can start to feel risky. So my goal with the book is to bring those two things back in tandem. So we want connections that are safe. And that's why it was really important for me to write this message.
You know, one thing that we really try to work on at Call to Peace Ministries in our support groups is that people, we can't stay in this mindset that we've been victimized. And you talk about that in relation to trust. And it says, just in the description of the book, I do love this description, but you're talking about how it's not just about finding safe people, but it's about learning how to find stability within yourself and with God.
You know, we don't just need to be told that we're safe, we need to feel it for ourselves. And in order to feel it for ourselves, we have to be honest about what's really going on. You know, mental health is a commitment to reality at all costs. So we have to acknowledge reality. And if we ever want to heal from the hurt that we're walking through, we have to deal with it. But in order to deal with it, we have to acknowledge fully what we're really experiencing. And for me, that was a really hard part of this process. I was terrified to tell other people at first, because I felt like if I tell other people, then it's going to invite public opinion into our very private pain. And also telling other people, I had this feeling in my heart that I was being disrespectful to my husband. And also, what if things weren't as bad as I felt like they were? And then I said something and it wasn't really true, then I would look like the crazy one. So there were many, many reasons that I justified an isolation that I went into. But isolation is never a good thing. We want to pick the right people to tell, but we should not go at this journey alone. That's really crucial.
Absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that. And I know at Call to Peace, we believe through our community of support, it's very important to walk alongside women in this and not leave them alone. And so I loved a lot of what you shared in your book, too, about repentance and what does that look like in building safe connection. And I think a lot of times, I feel like as a Christian woman, I was taught to overlook things and to say, oh, well, they're sorry. I need to forgive them. But you were talking about the repentance and what that looks like. Do you mind explaining just a little bit more about that? I know that was in your book as well. I just want to touch on that briefly.
Yeah, well, sometimes when we're in a relationship where someone is doing you're not just having difficulties, but it's slipped into being a difficult relationship to a destructive relationship. And when it gets to that place, it's easy for the other person, the person causing the hurt and the pain, it's easy for them to say they're sorry and it won't happen again. So the words are important, but what's even more important is the reaction that they have when you get triggered in pain. So, for example, if I walked into a room and I saw my ex-husband swipe his phone too quickly, it triggered me and I became afraid. So how I would say it is, I'm really afraid, I'm sensing something's off. Can I look at your phone? If the reaction was, are you serious? Like, we're not over this yet? Like, I feel like I'm doing nothing wrong and you just keep bringing it up and keep bringing it up. And I think the problem is you. I seriously think that you're crazy. Like, you're having mental issues. When it becomes really defensive and accusational against the one who is saying, hey, I just need to feel safe again. I'm not trying to accuse you of anything. I'm just expressing I'm afraid. If that's the reaction, that's not a good sign. If, on the other hand, the reaction is true repentance, then it should sound more like this. Of course, you need to look at my phone. Based on what we've been through, of course you do. Now, what do you need? Do you need me to unlock the phone? Do you need me to show you the different ways that I communicate with other people? Do you need me to, like, let you have your space? Do you need to talk about it? Do you need me to hold you? And when the repentance looks like that, in great humility and patience and kindness and understanding that the trauma that's been caused, it's not just the fact of what happened. Trauma is always two parts. It's the fact of what happened and it's the impact, what that cost you. And so when you get triggered, that's part of what this is costing you. It's part of indicating the impact that they've had on you. And so if the repentance is humble and gentle and understanding, that's a much better sign.
Wow, that is very well said and excellent. And that kind of leads me to our next question, too. You said something in your book, a quote I absolutely love. Just because I've been hurt doesn't mean I have to live hurt. What would you say to a woman who has survived abusive relationships and how they can live out that quote in their lives?
Well, first of all, I want to say if you have survived this in your relationship, just the fact that you went through any kind of abuse, I'm so sorry, because I don't want to put these trite answers on the depth of the kind of pain that you've been experiencing. Of course, you're angry. Of course, you're hurt. Of course, this feels devastating. But this kind of deep betrayal, while it is life altering, it doesn't have to be life ruining. They have already caused you so much hurt and so much pain. So, why in the world would we want their actions to make our response reducing our life down to the limitations of living hurt. Like they have already hurt us, but when we reduce our life down to, I don't just feel angry, but I'm going to be an angry person now. I don't just feel hurt, but I'm going to live as a hurt person now. When we make that choice, that's permitting them to hurt us twice. So for me, I got my brain scanned because I wanted to understand some of the reactions that I was having. And I know not everyone can go get their brain scanned, and you don't have to. Because if you've been through things similar to me, I can tell you what they discovered when I had my brain scanned. And it was so good because it was physical evidence of what feels like hard to nail down, all of these emotions. And so when I had my brain scanned, the doctor came in and put up a healthy brain and then my brain after walking through extreme betrayal and hurt and pain and all of that. And he identified 4 anxiety centers that stayed lit up, whether I was at rest or whether I was active. And these 4 anxiety centers were called the trauma diamond. It formed like a little diamond pattern. And he showed me like the top one up here, when this is lit up, this is PTSD. This is where like the outcome of this part of your brain being lit up, that's PTSD. And then other parts that were lit up, one of them was that constant like catastrophic thinking, thought spiraling. And so when he took the time to explain that there were physical ramifications to what appeared to be an emotional devastation that I'd gone through, I stopped having a problem with saying the word abuse. Before someone just said all abuse is physical. Absolutely. Absolutely. The hard thing about emotional abuse or even sexual abuse is that you can't always show people the trauma. Like physical abuse, that's horrible and awful, and it is devastating. But when you have a bruise, it makes it more real. Emotionally, like I was having all these issues, but at some point I had to acknowledge what I was really dealing with. And that made me take my pain more seriously. And it kind of helped explain why was I having some of these reactions. And so once I knew what I was dealing with, it became my choice. And I can either live as a victim of what happened, so completely understandable. I was a victim of what happened. But at some point, I have to make the choice to transfer that to walking in victory. So I can either be a victim or I can walk in victory, but I cannot do both at the same time. And me choosing to walk in victory, it does not diminish the pain of what I went through. I'm still a victim of abuse, but I refuse to live as a victim of emotional abuse. Because if I do, then I'm reducing all of the possibilities of my life down to this one thing. Look, betrayal is life altering, but it doesn't have to be life ruining.
Wow. Wow. That was so well said. I love every bit of that. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I would like to know too, how does someone move forward when a trusted organization or church that should have helped you turn their back or either hurt you instead?
You know, when I went to therapy, I think I had to do more work post my divorce. I had to do more work on friends that I thought would stand by my side that didn't. I had to do so much work around that because that betrayal was so shocking and so unexpected. And so if you've walked through that, whether it's an organization that didn't support you like you thought they would, or maybe even excommunicated you out of a group of believers that, it's like this happened to you, but now the pain is being doubled because you're not being supported like you just assumed you would be supported. So, or it's like friends that walk away because of what you've been through. Again, I just want to say I'm so sorry. And at the same time, you deserve to stop suffering because of what these people or what that organization did to you. And the only way that you can start the healing process is to walk through forgiveness. When I wrote my book, Forgiving What You Can't Forget, I did over 1,000 hours of theological study of forgiveness. And before you get too impressed with that, 750 of those approximately were me looking for the loophole. Like, surely God does not mean that I have to forgive everything, because there were some really hurtful things that happened. I never found that loophole. But what I did find is, just because we forget